Good morning and welcome to Member Focus Monday. I'm Christina Schaefer, Director of Social Media for HAR, and I'm pleased to be joined today by HAR's Director of IT and Security, Edward Monker. Welcome to the program, Edward.
Good morning, Christina. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Thank you so much. I know we had you here about a year ago, but there's been so much development since then, and so many things have changed in the world of IT and security. Some things have remained the same, but also the introduction of AI has posed some new challenges. So we have a lot to talk about today, Edward. Before we jump into everything, though, tell us a little bit about yourself for anybody who hasn't heard from you before, who you are and what you do.
Okay, so I am the Director of IT and Cybersecurity here at HAR, and in my role, I lead a team with the responsibility of maintaining most of the association's digital assets. We maintain all line of business applications, we oversee cybersecurity, implement business continuity plans, as well as deploy and support remote work technologies.
Wonderful, thank you. And you have been with HAR quite some time now, right?
Yeah, just maybe 2 decades or so, maybe somewhere around
just
there.
just a little while. Very good. Well,
Yes,
thank you
yes,
again,
just a
Edward.
while.
Yeah, and we're really excited to hear from you this morning. I know there's probably going to be a lot of questions, so I'll go ahead and say now, if you have questions while Edward and I are talking, please type those in. We'll get to as many as we can. I know last time you were on, we had a lot of questions too, so we'll get to as many of those as we can. Let's just jump right into some kind of overall information here. What are some common cybersecurity threats that the real estate industry as a whole faces today?
So the threats that real estate professionals face are not unlike what other professionals face on a daily basis, and those are going to be credential compromise, phishing, ransomware, data leaks, and most commonly human errors and misconfigurations.
And I think we're going to get into some of those human errors maybe a little bit later. But
Right.
you mentioned phishing. So tell us a little bit more about that. What is phishing, and what are some tips to avoid phishing attacks?
So phishing attacks are a category of cybercrime, typically using email messages to target individuals with the objective of having them reveal sensitive information. In phishing scenarios, attackers will typically masquerade as trustworthy entities or individuals, such as banks or coworkers. And what they're trying to do is obtain your login credentials, ultimately with the goal of extracting financial value from the interaction with you. So there's some steps that you can take, but really just some vigilance on where this email is supposed to be coming from, the type of communication. Is it typical for the communication that you're receiving, or in the style of the person that you are expecting this communication to come from? And then also, is it something that's typical for your job role? If it's something that has nothing to do with you, perhaps you're getting an invoice, but you're not in an accounts payable role, then it's one of those things that raises a red flag. And in many instances, if we exercise just a little bit of diligence, we'd be able to see that either there's a domain that doesn't make sense, a premise that doesn't make sense, or the communication style is not something typical of a trusted person.
So, real estate professionals, they're on the go a lot. They're looking at their emails typically on their phone, sometimes when they're in a hurry. So what is your recommendation? I know you said kind of slow down, use a little diligence, maybe even tap on the sender to see the email address. What do you recommend they do?
Well, it depends on what's happening. I think I definitely agree with you that we are just so hyper active, right? In the sense of being connected to our devices and getting these alert notifications. We have business that we're attending to, and we have this constant connection to our work email primarily. Um, if you're if you're getting a notification, for example, a text message, um, is it something that makes sense? Are you getting a notification from the App Store indicating that you made a purchase that is a purchase that doesn't make sense to you, either the type of purchase or the dollar amount that's being mentioned? And is it even normal for you to get those type of notifications? Which I'll inform you today that when you make a purchase from the App Store, you don't get a notification indicating that you spent $600 plus. But the attackers are counting on just this limited slice of time that you have to focus to raise alarm and cause you to lower your guard and
Hmm.
take actions that you ordinarily wouldn't take.
Okay. And now we're talking about emails right now. We're going to talk about text and even DMs on social media a little bit later, but I think that's a great way to kind of open up this conversation. So, what should someone do if they suspect that a cybersecurity incident has occurred? Maybe they clicked something they weren't supposed to, or something else happened.
Well, it's crucial to respond swiftly and decisively. The actions you take will be specific to your environment. For example, if you have an IT department, perhaps you want to reach out immediately to that department so that they can initiate scans of your machine or totally isolate it from the network temporarily. In cases involving financial fraud, such as unauthorized transactions to a bank or credit card, you want to promptly contact your financial institution using a verified phone number that perhaps is on the back of your card that you were issued, and not trusting the contact details that are provided in a suspicious email that may have precipitated this incident.
Mm-hmm.
In other instances, in the case of wire fraud or some significant financial crime that you think you're in the middle of witnessing, then you want to go ahead and report it to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center at www.ic3.gov. But whatever the factors are involved in the security incident, when you're reporting it, it's very important to provide as thorough and transparent details as possible. And that ensures that the security professionals can accurately assess, scope, and address the situation. And even though we all hate to admit when we make silly mistakes, transparency is key. So fess up. Don't allow your pride to hinder the effective resolution of the security incident. Be as detailed as you can in telling your IT staff or any authorities exactly what steps you took, even if it makes you look bad in the short run.
Very good. Thank you so much, Edward. If there are any questions, please feel free to type them in and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can. And we did put the ic3.gov website in the chat. So if anybody wants to go take a look at that, so you know where to report those if unfortunately if it does occur. Thank you for giving us that email address, Edward. We put it there for people to utilize. So now, realtors are not just protecting their own information, right? They also have to worry about sensitive client information that they may receive in various ways. How can they best protect that sensitive client information?
I think there are three pillars to focus on. And the first being secure access. You want to make sure that you have robust, unique passwords for each online account that you use. Obviously, this means not ever reusing a password across multiple accounts. You want to utilize a password management tool like LastPass in order to facilitate the creation and maintenance of quality passwords. And quality passwords are all, a combination of length and complexity. We also suggest that where available, you enable two-factor authentication that uses a temporary random numeric code or a software or hardware token in order to enhance your login process in addition to the username and password. The second pillar I think is very important is just be good stewards of your client data. Handle your client data with the discretion and care that you would handle your own. And when the transmission of personally identifiable information is necessary, ensure it's encrypted in order to maintain confidentiality and integrity of the data, both in transit and while it's at rest. And then third, patch management. As simple a procedure as that is, it's something that's woefully neglected. You want to promptly apply software updates and patches from your trusted vendors in order to mitigate known exploitable vulnerabilities. And proactive maintenance is essential in protecting against exploits that specifically target outdated computer systems.
Okay. Thank you so much. So the last time you were on this program, we briefly discussed AI because it was still something that was so new to, the broader public. More and
Right.
more people are utilizing AI in various ways in their business now, including our members, real estate professionals. So with that, of course, I'm sure comes threats. So in what ways is AI posing new cyber threats to the industry?
So I thought about this and I came up with one that actually bubbles way up to the top, and that's going to be AI deepfakes. Those are presenting a sophisticated and new set of challenges that we haven't seen before. And a deepfake, just to give you a definition, is artificially generated audio or visual representation in order to convince someone that a trusted individual is giving them an instruction. So it's using your video and your voice in order to carry out some of the traditional, if you will, cyber attacks that we're familiar with. For example, deepfakes are elevating traditional phishing attacks to new levels by being able to synthetically create your voice or video. And the cyber criminals will use that to create this content. And then what they're trying to do ultimately is to get to mislead your clients, your employees, or associates into executing an unauthorized financial transaction in most cases. The malicious use of deepfakes extends well beyond financial fraud, and we have to think of it in terms of what other damage or harm can be inflicted. And the top one that I can think of is just an individual being targeted by an extortion scheme where a deepfake involving either inappropriate language, inappropriate actions, sensitive content are used to tarnish reputations and coerce victims to, again, perhaps pay some sort of ransom or to gain some financial advantage.
Yeah. And I mean, how do they acquire? Is it the more that you're out there, the more they have to work with? Like myself, for example, there's hundreds, I'm sure thousands of hours of video and recorded content out there of me. Does that make me a larger target, or are they more looking for people, elected officials, CEOs, people in high positions of power?
The higher your profile, whether that's in terms of corporate profile or your social media profile, the more likely you are to be targeted. And the AI language models depend on vast amounts of training data in order to become more accurate. So for you, who has this Facebook Live and other instances where you're on YouTube and so on, there's a vast data set that they can use in order to present something that's much more convincing than a typical person who may only have a short video or social media profile that's locked down. So the answer is yes. CEOs, because of their corporate profile, are going to be targets. Social media influencers or personalities are also going to be targeted because of their social media profile. Any of us can be a target because it's not necessarily about the dollar amount that they can extract, but just the fact that they can extract some value and then they're going to move on to the next person and repeat that process.
Okay. So just staying on the deep fake route here for a second, are there strategies that you could put into place, maybe with family, coworkers, anything like that could help prevent any sort of issue or being maybe convinced by a deep fake?
I think if we just encourage folks to use their best intuition, for example, in HAR, our ability to interact with CEO, executive vice president, we can walk up to them and have conversations at any point in time. The casual nature of those conversations, they're professional but casual. There are certain things that are not going to show up on our CEO's profile or the way that he speaks in a public setting, right? And I won't reveal what those things are because I'm going to keep them here so that I know if you don't use a particular word, a particular phrase, address me in a particular way, then I know that regardless of what you're asking me to do, that's not something that I can trust. But further, what you would always come back to is when there's some question, even if you think it's convincing, a financial transfer may be outside of what they're going to normally ask you to do. Always use what we call out-of-band communication, which means if you're contacted by email, then you follow up with a phone call. If you're contacted by text message, and maybe your CEO or your executive vice president or your controller is traveling, maybe let's get voice verification and talk about kids, talk about family members, talk about things that you would know, but would be difficult for someone to be able to pull out of thin air. And having worked here for 20 years or so, I know quite a bit about the some of the good personal details of the staff here. So
Mhm.
it's just one of those things that you can develop a keyword, whenever you're asking for certain types of things to be done.
Mhm. Okay, very good. So almost like a real life, in person, IRL, two-factor authentication.
Oh yes, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that at some point.
Well, good. So continuing this AI train of thought, and I did see a couple questions come in a comment. So if you have more questions, please type those in, and I'll get to those in just a moment. Continuing on this AI route, though, there are questions about data security. So members who are wanting to utilize AI in their business, what are your recommendations for them in regard to data security, whether it be their personal or client data?
So the primary threat here is going to be through data leaks, and data leak is basically where information that is not actively hacked, so to speak, but through some user error or human error, it finds itself into the hands of some authorized party. So to ensure data security with AI, it's essential to avoid submitting sensitive information, and by sensitive I mean anything that's personal to you, your client, or organizational data such as spreadsheets that contain financial information into any language model interface. And the reason for that is that the data that's submitted as a prompt to a language model, an AI interface, cannot be treated as being safeguarded. It may also, depending on how the AI is configured, may become part of that data model's training data set, and subsequently, presented to someone that's totally unrelated to your company, your organization, and now you have something that is not only sensitive, but it can bring about some regulatory and compliance concerns because now an unauthorized person has access to that data. So data leaks is the number one threat, I believe, as it relates to this particular phase that we're going through with the introduction of AI in the workplace.
Okay. So definitely need to be cautious there. Let's take a look. I know that I saw a question come in. Yes, right here from Becky. What is your opinion of using LifeLock for our personal information and credit cards?
Uh, LifeLock has a purpose. I don't use it. My personal information, I tend to use the tools that are provided through the major credit monitoring bureaus. So the big three offer credit monitoring, and also the ability to lock down your profile. And so I don't subscribe to any of those services such as LifeLock. I know some do, but I think that with due diligence, starting off with just reaching out and locking your credit profile from being able to be accessed without your approval is the first step. And then second, there are some services that will give you, there's a service called myfico.com, and you pay for credit monitoring. Any inquiries that come up will automatically send you an alert on an app, but it also goes and scours the what they call the deep web in order to see if your personal data is being utilized and showing up in places that it ought not to.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Hopefully that's helpful to you there, Becky. Um, let's talk a little bit about social media because I see this often, and I know realtors they have to utilize social media in a lot of ways when it comes to their marketing. So if someone creates a social media account and let's just say they utilize my name and my photo, have I been hacked?
That's a great question, and I can't say how many times I've seen this reported incorrectly. It's kind of a pet peeve of mine. So the short answer is no. Your account has been impersonated but not hacked. And the distinction is if it were hacked, you would no longer have either exclusive access or any access to your account. And so An impersonation is a brand new account that has nothing to do with your account that you're using on a regular basis.
Okay.
And while it may seem that that's a bit of hair splitting between the two, it's important to be accurate, especially when you're reporting it for some technical assistance, either to law enforcement or to your technical staff.
Okay, so how can you prevent? Is there a way at all to prevent impersonation on social media?
So, very little can be done to actually prevent the impersonation, particularly if your account is a public account. However, there are steps that you can take to limit the impact an impersonating account can have. And first, what you'd want to do on any of the socials, you go ahead and claim your handle or your username just to make sure that no one else is able to claim it. I would also suggest regularly monitoring and searching for your digital presence by name and even a profile photo. Where possible, Facebook, for example, hide your friends list from public view because that is one of the nuggets that they're looking to access in order to farm and send them a message with that fake profile pretending to be you stuck in a foreign country requesting money from them. I would also suggest that you limit the amount of personal information that you share online, obviously, and then foster a culture amongst your social media friends and family of reporting impersonating accounts. And don't assume someone else is going to do it. If you see an account that's clearly someone else's account being impersonated, just take the time to go ahead and report it. And amongst your friends and family, explain to them the risks of account impersonation. And finally, you can seek legal help if the account impersonation rises to the level of causing reputational harm or brand damage. There may be legal remedies that you can explore, but that's going to be an issue to take to either law enforcement or to an attorney.
Okay. And from my experience, or at least what I've seen, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, going back to the deep fakes earlier and how we mentioned maybe higher profile people might be more likely to be a victim. It doesn't seem like that's the case when it comes to social media impersonation. Do you find that same thing, that it really just could be anyone?
Yeah, I think it can be anyone. So long as you have a presence that someone can research and target, yes, you're going to be equally a ripe target. There are some targeted attacks that may target certain individuals, but if you have a kid with barely any friends, maybe 2 or 3 friends, they can still become a target.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So if there are any other questions, please type them in. I saw a couple comments that come in, and I want to address those after this next question I have for you, because we talked about phishing at the beginning a little bit. But what are some other ways to tell? We were mostly talking about email in the beginning. So how can you tell if an email, a text message, a DM, because there's so many different ways we can get messages, right? How can you tell if something that you've received is a scam or potentially malicious?
So let's address the emails first. The number one item that you want to look at is the senders from the address, the email address that this originated from. And is it a domain that looks like it's affiliated with the company or individual that you're supposed to be communicating with? Is it from a domain that's outside of the country? Is it the message, again, I've said this, is it typical for what your job role is? And if it's not, then that's a red flag. And is the communication style familiar or typical for who this known party is that's engaging at the moment? Now, in the case of text messages or direct messages, the knowledge of what types of communication to expect is essential. For example, an unsolicited text message from the App Store, as I mentioned before, it's almost certainly a scam and can be dismissed without even looking any further. Same thing goes for Amazon purchases, and those two are quite common with SMS type messages. You should also avoid, in any of these instances, contacting any number associated with that message. And if there's some reason you become engaged with them because you allowed your better judgment to take a back seat, as soon as you hear these things referring to gift cards, or they're asking you to read back a 6-digit code. You're going to get a text message. We want you to verify and read the 6-digit code back to me. Those two are your red flags, and I would immediately hang up without providing this information. And the second scenario, when you're reading back a two-factor authentication code, what's really being done in many cases is that they've gone to the website, hit this option to forgot password, and now it's a legitimate site. Let's say it's my iCloud account, for example. So they go to iCloud and they choose that option that they've forgotten the password. The two-factor text message comes to me. I read it back to them. They enter it and they can lock me out of my account. Mm-hmm. So just think of how disruptive that can be if you have your iCloud account hijacked. Mm-hmm. So gift cards or reading back any type of text message, two-factor code, red flags, don't respond, hang up right away.
Okay. And you were mentioning iCloud, but are Android users, are they potential to also be victims to those same kinds of things?
Yeah. Absolutely. And any platform where you aggregate your photos, your memories, your communications, your financial data is ripe for abuse. So I use the iCloud as an option, but Android, as well as any other platforms where you aggregate that type of information, can also be just as risky.
Okay, very good. I wanted to share a comment that came in a little earlier from Peggy Pentecost. She said, stop and think and make certain that you're clicking a trusted link in those emails and text messages. Check the senders for authenticity and utilize FOREWARN. That's a good point there that Peggy's making. As a reminder, FOREWARN is available to all HAR MLS subscribers at no additional charge, and we did post the link for more information about FOREWARN in the comments too. So a great option there for double checking.
Right.
Yeah. Well, very good. So Edward, so for any maybe broker owners that are tuned in today, what are some strategies that you'd recommend to them to, excuse me, to secure their real estate brokerages and all of that sensitive business information they have? And also, is it important for them to have security policies and make sure their agents and staff are up to date?
Yes. So ideally, the brokerage will have established policies regarding acceptable use of technology in the business. The policies should be reviewed regularly and updated to include emerging technologies such as AI and anything else that we see down the road. Mm. If there's not an official policy, a list of at least having some best practices or guidelines should be provided to staff at a minimum. And the lowest cost measure that you can take would be to provide regular cybersecurity training for all staff at least once a year, instructing them on the policies and practices, along with a high-level overview of the threats that they're likely to encounter in business.
Okay, very good. And I'm sure I know we've discussed this before. Are there maybe even some sort of templates online that maybe if I'm an individual broker owner and I don't have a very large company, are there things that I could use for guidance or models that other businesses have used?
I don't know that there are any specific to real estate. A lot of the templates that I use are actually more on the higher level IT side. So I'll research it, and maybe we can provide that answer later. Okay. I don't know that. Usually there's some short list of best practices. You'll see articles that bubble up from time to time on traditional media or even on social media on some best practices. But I don't know that there are actually clearly defined templates for small businesses that don't have an IT team. For IT professionals, we have a ton of resources, but I think that's perhaps above the level of what you're asking for at this point.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Edward. Well, you've shared a lot with us today, and thank you for letting us pick your brain to keep ourselves and clients safe. Is there anything else that you want to share with us today?
Sure. For anyone that's tuned in today and perhaps feeling overwhelmed about their overall cybersecurity posture, I'd like to encourage you to think about just implementing only one of these best practice recommendations, and then incrementally apply others over time. It's something that even the most experienced IT teams have used and continue to use successfully. So don't be overwhelmed. If you need any help, you can reach out to us here at HAR. Cyber@har.com is the email address that you're welcome to use, and we'll happily point you in the direction of tools and some resources in order to help make that journey just a little bit easier.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And again, that email address was cyber@har.com. I did want to share one last comment that we had come in from Peggy. She said, "We are so fortunate to have Edward and the amazing staff at HAR as members. They stay a step ahead of the industry in all things pertaining to our success in our business." So I just wanted to share those kudos there from Peggy.
Oh, thank you.
Very good. Well, I'm seeing a couple more thank yous come in. Don't see any other questions. But again, Edward, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it and getting these updates from you, because it can be scary. So it's important to have the knowledge base and take some of these precautions that you were mentioning today. So again, thank you so much for doing that. I do want to mention before we go that we will not have a show for the next 2 weeks. We are taking a little summer break. But we will be back. You can set your calendars. We will be back on July 8th, Monday, July 8th at 9 a.m. with Eric Berger from Space City Weather. And I know that he was a very popular guest when we had him on a couple of years ago, so I'm sure people will love to hear from him again this year, especially since we're already having some weather issues this year. So again, July 8th, 9 a.m., we'll be back with Eric Berger from Space City Weather. I will see you then. Thank you again, Edward, and have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.